What up, YouTube? I am so sorry that I've been gone for such an extended period of time. Didn't mean to leave you guys hanging. I haven't stopped filming. Got a couple Lincoln videos in the works that I'm just waiting on a couple things to be finished up on before I post the video. And then I'm making this video right now for you guys. And then I got another video for some new lights that I'm gonna check out for you as well. So I definitely do sincerely apologize for my long absence. I have not quit YouTube. I am still doing auto repair, and so let's get to it. Today we're going to be using this Maddox brake flaring kit, and we're going to do a couple of brake line flares. We're going to do a double flare and a bubble flare. Stay tuned. Alright, so here's what's in the kit. If the audio sounds funny, it's because I forgot to turn my mic on when I recorded this the first time, so I'm doing a voiceover. Here's the main clamping tool that you use to make your flares. It's like a vise, and then you have all your different dies for different types of flares. And then over here you also have the clamping mechanism that makes your flares, as well as a cutting tool to cut flares off of lines. And this is a chamfering tool to give a nice chamfer to the inside of the brake line. Let's get started. So here we have the clamping tool installed into the vise. We got a piece of copper nickel brake line, and it is a 3/16 size. So we're going to go ahead and install that into the clamp. I did go ahead and kind of deburr it a little bit with a file. So we'll go ahead and get this installed. And yeah, I was just showing how I filed it off. I did use my bench grinder, but I didn't turn it on. I just kind of used it as a file because I don't own a file. So anyway, here we are, putting the line inside of the clamping tool. Just got to get it set up properly. And then here in a second, I will be turning on the, setting the die next to it. There's going to be a couple of ridges that we'll see here in just a second. They're either ridges or steps. This is a 3/16 or 4.75 millimeter. So the steps that you're going to see right here, there's an upper one and a lower one. You want to make sure that your line is sticking out of the clamping tool flush with the first step or the lower step. So we're going to go ahead and take care of that now, making sure that it is lined up as best as I can, and making sure that the clamp is good and tight. And then I believe, yeah, right here is where I ran into some trouble because I wasn't able to tighten the other wing nut all the way, so I had to move the clamping tool outward a little bit so that I could actually finish tightening that side down. Looks like we're getting pretty close there. I think I was having to even it out because it wasn't wanting to tighten much more. So I loosened them up and made them a little bit more evenly tightened. So now that we've got that set up, we can move on to the next step, which is to take the pressing tool, which I should be showing here in just a moment. Oh no, we're going to go ahead and chamfer the hole. That's correct. Definitely want to make sure you get a good chamfer. The better the chamfer, the better the flare. Definitely a good idea to at least cut some of that out of there. And then I've zoomed in here to go ahead and give you guys a little bit better view of what exactly I'm doing here. And once again, I do apologize that I'm having to do a voiceover on this. I totally forgot to turn my microphone on. So anyway, we're going to take that die and we're going to put it in upside down where the little pin goes inside of the brake line. And then once we have that installed, we're going to take the clamping tool and we're going to place it on top here once I grab it out of the kit. So yeah, there's the clamping tool. And I was pointing out here, or at least I believe this is the spot, where there's a couple of ridges in the clamping tool and it will turn diagonal. Here's the ridges I'm talking about. And it'll turn diagonal and those ridges will kind of lock in on the clamping tool as I'm showing here. So once you've got that die in place, you can go ahead and turn the clamping tool, or the pressing tool rather, out as far as you need to get the press tip, if you will, up high enough to get above the die. And then once you do that, you can just go ahead and clamp it down, trying to make sure that you are keeping it as centered as possible. I believe I also mentioned a couple times on the original recording that it is a good idea to go ahead and lubricate the line and or the tool with a little bit of brake fluid, but I opted not to do that here just because this line is never going to really be used for anything. It's just going to be kind of a test piece for the video. And so here I'm explaining that you want to tighten it down until the die gets just flush with the clamping tool, and that's it. You don't want to clamp down on it extremely tightly because you can actually cause the brake line to crack. So that's the first part of our double flare. That would be a single flare. You could take that off right now, and that would be a single flare. Very few brake lines are going to be that way, so usually you're going to want to do the double flare. So the next part, which is step 2, is to take the die off and essentially do the same thing over again, except this time you're pressing the tool directly against the line instead of having the die in between it. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of fold that flare over itself and cause that double flare to be created. And then of course I'm going to go ahead and pull this out of the clamp and I'll show you guys what it looks like here. And apologize in advance, my camera wasn't wanting to zoom, or not zoom, but focus too well on this particular section. So I hope you guys can see that fairly well. Definitely not the best flare in the world, but I believe that that would be a usable flare and would likely not leak if it was tightened down. That is a decent flare. Not the best, but decent. So now that we're all finished up with that, we can go ahead and move on to the bubble flare. I'm going to use the other side of this line, and we have to flip this over. I believe I've already done that. I didn't even notice it flip around while I'm doing the voiceover. So you can see that the wing nuts are on the other side. We want to go ahead and clamp it into the same size hole. Again, we did take the clamping tool and we flipped it 180, so the wing nuts are facing the opposite direction. One side of the clamping tool is used for bubble flares. The other side of the clamping tool is used for double flares. So on the bubble flare, you want to get your line in there where it's just flush with the top of the tool. You do not want it to stick out at all. Then we're going to go ahead and take the chamfering tool again, I believe, and go ahead and clean out the inner diameter of the brake line. Also, this is the die for the bubble flares. This one is a 4.75 millimeter. We want to go ahead and take the original tool off of the pressing tool, or the original tip or bit, whatever you want to call it. And then we will screw this new one on for the bubble flare. This is a 4.75 millimeter size. There was like 4 different ones in the kit. So here's the chamfering tool. That vise didn't want to stay clamped down on the very edge there. I had to really clamp on it. So now we got that chamfered. The bubble flare has pretty much the same process as the double flare, except you use a different tool on your pressing tool, and it is only a 1-step process instead of a 2-step process. So you tighten this down here, and then once we get that tightened down, that will be the bubble flare. So you'll see here I was kind of explaining that I was having a hard time getting it clamped down very well in the vice grip, or in the vise, not vice grips. So another thing I was pointing out here is the long handle on that tool. I really kind of like that. It makes it a lot easier to turn than some of the shorter handled ones that I've used and seen. So we got it just flush there. Once again, you don't want to over tighten or over clamp on it, because you can cause your brake line to crack or break if you do that. So now that we've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off here and show you guys my bubble flare. I must say that the double flare that I did turned out a little bit better than the bubble. I wasn't extremely impressed with this particular bubble flare. It would probably work, but I'm pretty picky when it comes to flares. If it doesn't look like brand new from the factory, I'm usually not too happy with it. Once again, sorry for the lack of focus. I tried my best to get you guys to be able to see this here. So that's pretty much the best we're going to get there. That's essentially what the bubble flare looks like. It depends on what type of brake line you're making and what it came off of and what it's connecting to, which kind of flare you're going to want to use. But this flaring kit does both of them, so I figured I would show what each one looks like. If you have any questions or any issues doing your own brake lines, definitely leave those in the comments below, and I will be happy to help you out in any way that I can. And so this has been bubble and double flares using the Maddox brake flaring tool that I picked up at Harbor Freight.